We are muted and y'all can't hear nothing we saying.
We were just discussing something we didn't want you guys to
We
hear.
didn't want you to hear. So bottom line is we are here in Porto, Portugal, and Rick has gone wine tasting.
I know.
He's on his 10th glass of wine at this point.
I'm in Portugal.
Yes,
I'm
you
in
are. Porto.
Yeah, so you got to taste the wine. You got to drink. You're in the Douro Valley.
Yes.
In the Douro Valley.
See, you see, this is what we deal with tonight. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about dating. When is the last time you've been on the dating scene?
19 and maybe
74?
2001, 2002, something like that.
He was fine back in the day. So it has been a long time. I didn't really get to be on the dating scene because the second time we just hung out, he asked me to marry him. He says he was just kidding. He wasn't kidding.
It was the genes.
He wasn't kidding.
It was the genes.
What about the genes?
It was the genes.
What about the genes?
Never mind. I don't want to get demonetized.
That's grown folk talk.
Yeah, grown folk talk.
So we're going to talk about dating abroad today. We're going to talk about dating in 2023 as opposed to 19 and 9 to 8. It is a lot different out there, right? And maybe we'll even talk about some differences in what the dating scene looks like in the United States for the two people that we have on. We can't talk about the whole world, but we're going to talk about our experiences and their experiences here in Portugal and other countries that they've lived or worked. Both of the guests that we have on have either lived or worked in other countries. And so, yeah, well, let's hear what they have to say.
Yeah, but first let's introduce ourselves for those that don't know us.
Hi, y'all. My name's Halisi.
Did you forget?
I didn't forget.
And I'm Rick. Welcome to Our Black Utopia.
On our channel, we talk about money, travel, and retiring abroad. As we think about building generational wealth, we'll see if these kids deserve it. Now, I said it. But first, if you are new to our channel, then you may not know about 7 years ago, Rick and I got a wake-up call. We were getting close to retirement age. You guys know we are here in Porto going to Our Rich Journeys meetup. And so last year we did 365 Days of Fire, but way before that we did their Fire Masterclass. And that was the thing that got us on track.
It was so eye-opening.
Right? It got us on track. But what we realized is it looked different if you were closer to retirement.
It did.
Right? And so we had to kind of reformulate things so that it worked for people who are 50 plus. So if you are interested in that, Beyond the Bling Money Mindset Makeover for Financial Independence, that information is down in the description.
Yes.
So we got a wake-up call. We were at negative 22,000. And in 3.5 years, we went from negative 22,000 to over 1 million in net worth. So he's so goofy. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please hit that like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell so that you know every single time we go live. Let's bring on our guests.
See, I was going to say it differently.
What were you going to say?
Let's get ready to rumble.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And we will start with ladies first. Hey, Twana.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Halisi. Hey, everybody watching. How are y'all doing?
Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Twana Hines. I'm a sexual health educator and an entrepreneur, American, born and raised there, and I currently live in Lisbon, Portugal. This is my 3rd time living abroad.
Yay.
Yeah.
Mr. Sparks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Sparks, and I also live in Lisbon, Portugal. I've been here for 1.5 years now. I am what I characterize as being semi-retired. I've been out of the workspace for 5 years, have 4 kids, 1 grandchild, am loving living in Lisbon, and looking forward to sharing with everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
You
All
definitely
right.
don't look old enough to have grandkids.
No,
Yeah, I'm 61 for the record. I'm old.
you wear
And
it well.
I'm widowed as well. I like to put that out there as well. Been widowed for 23 years.
Wow. Wow. Um, I tell you, we know black doesn't crack, but when you see it, when you see it live and in person. Hey, Vanessa, good to see you. We're going to say hello to some of the people who are in the chat today. Valerina, Auntie Trey.
Auntie Trey,
Action
both
VJ always coming through saying hit that like button if you haven't already, because we've got over 100 people watching. So I hope we have 100 likes up in the house. Hey, Greta.
Hey, Greta.
Hey, Greta.
Hey, Greta, too.
Two Gretas.
Hey, Karen Louise. Yeah, we got 2 Gretas, and that's not really a common name.
Yeah, and both of them are awesome.
Yes, definitely. Hey, Alexandria. Good to see you, Mama Bear. Auntie Trey. Yeah, I know we had no audio, so we are going to put something in the thing saying we start at 51 seconds. We got so excited about this subject matter that we were just going off. Plus, he's tipsy, so I'm putting it on him. He is the one who's supposed to be the tech guy. Hey,
the
Kay.
tech is working. You got to take it off of mute.
Hey, Tunisia, good to see you. Carol, Sharon, Shana, Lucille, Bree, good to see you guys in the chat. Let us know. Bree's in hot Texas. It's hot here too.
It's hot.
Yeah.
What's happening in Lisbon? Is it 90 again today?
I think 94 was the high, right?
Oh,
It was
my God.
Yeah, exactly.
It was hot.
My goodness.
Well, it wasn't as hot here.
No, it was only 80. Hey, Henry, that's a new
wow.
name. Henry Harville, new name. Welcome, MT. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Krishan is in the house.
Krishan.
And thank you, Krishan, with Black Sit Global. She and I are partnering together, Our Black Utopia, Black Sit Global, to do a Move to Portugal Summit first weekend in November. Information to get on the wait list is down below so that you know when tickets go on sale. There's going to be an early bird special. You do not want to miss out on that. Hey, Deborah. Hello, Halisi and Rick. Good to see you. Good to see you, Winnie. Who else is in the chat? Barbara. Pretty particular. New name. On my way out of here. Phyllis A. Phyllis has changed her name. All right. We want to see you back here, Phyllis. That's for sure. Hey, Jametta. Good to see you. All right. Igami. Who else is in? We've got Patricia Nelson. That's a new name. Meriton. Ronick West is in the house. Paula, love you guys. We love you guys so, so much. All right, let's get started. Dating. See, we don't know anything about this.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. A long time. Yeah, I mean, the technology didn't exist. This was in the days before even like Matchdotcom. I don't remember what it was back in those days. I know you had to pay a lot of money. And you had to fill out questionnaires and questionnaires and questionnaires. There was no swipe left and right and all of that stuff.
I think the dating game was still on.
Cut it out.
That's after my time. I ain't saying that. That's after my time. Shoot. Okay, so let's get started. Let's hear in general what the general temperature is out there, especially because y'all are grown. You're not 30, right? Grown. And so I think it looks different when you are grown as adult than when you are 20 or 30. What do you see are the differences? And then what is the general temperature out there for adults? You want to start, Twana?
Sure, that's a nice meaty questions. I love meat, so this is great. So interestingly, 2 questions. One, what's the temperature like? It's 91 and I'm dying, so please excuse me if you see me drinking tons of water. But as far as the dating temperature, you're 100% right. Dating when you're in your teens or when you're in your 20s is much more exploratory in the sense where you're still figuring out what you even want, let alone what the partner is bringing to the table. You've got questions about what you're interested in, what you like, where you see yourself in the future, which college you're going to go to. Like your teens and your 20s are such an area that are just not gelled quite yet, right? You're
Yeah.
still figuring all of those things out for yourself. So dating is part of that as well. People experiment with their sexuality then. You figure out whether or not monogamy is for you or non-monogamy. That's where people make a lot of these decisions and thoughts about like what do they think their future could look like, and dating helps play part of that conversation. By the time you've passed into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, your life is more gelled. That's not to say you don't change it. All of us are Americans that lived in the US and now we live in Portugal. So things still change. But as far as what are your core beliefs? What are the things that are extremely
Yeah.
important to you? What are you looking for in life? Those things are a bit more gelled at 45 and 65 and 75 than they are at 15 and 25. So I'd say that's when I hear the question about what's the difference between, say, 20s and beyond, that's the first thing that I think about.
Do you want to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, I think Tawana's right on point. First of all, I'll note that, when I was dating in my 20s, that was 40 years ago. And I wasn't doing a lot of that. But she's absolutely right about you're probably searching a bit, trying to figure out who you are and, how do you function and where do you fit into, a pretty confusing set of circumstances, quite frankly. Nowadays, at least for me, I feel very fortunate in that, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I know how to seek that out. And so that's very reassuring and comforting. And I do that, but again, for the past 20 years or so, I've had family obligations, so I really didn't do a lot of dating or really engage in it. But I've started in the past 5 years or so, really getting out there and exploring and frankly broadening my experiences and my horizons, which has been interesting and fun.
I want to hear more about this broadening of these
We're-
horizons, if you're willing to share.
Yeah,
Do
we're
tell,
definitely
Keith.
going to get to
Well,
that. But before we get to that, what is the general temperature out there? Like, have things changed? People's attitudes changed? As grown folks, not as kids. I don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. But for our, age group, 45 to 65, 75, whatever, is there a change in the way things are? Are people like pessimistic, cynical? What's going on out there?
First, I would push back on the idea that the kids don't know what they're doing and that grown folks do. As someone who dates grown folks, not all grown folks know what the hell they're doing either. So pushing back on that just a little bit. But as far as things changing, I would say two primary factors. First, the amount of time that Americans, I can only really speak for American culture and Americans, right? And the experience of what it's like being an American dating here. But for Americans, we have had a fundamental shift in the way that we date and have dating and single lives. So, like, rewind 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, the majority of your adult life would be married, would be coupled, because you would have married much younger. The ability for you to divorce, the social acceptance for that to even be possible, would be much lower. So, you would have married much younger. The likelihood that you divorce would be lower. And so most of your adult life would be spent as a married person. So what we're seeing now is that's gone. We now are seeing people are spending a vast majority of their life as single, and singleness is something that people dip in and out. And so it's no longer this like, oh, I was single and then I got married. It's like, okay, I was single and then I was dating and as a single mom of two or as a single dad, and then I got married again, and so I had this whole blended family thing, and then my partner died or divorced, and so then I was like now being older and single. So this singleness is something that people have and will continue to dip out of their lives. So that way of being single, plus people marry later, divorce more often, and are living longer. So even if your partner passes away when you're 40, 50, 60, you could still have another 20, 25, 30 years as a person who's out there single looking for another apartment. Gosh, clearly I live in a city. Everybody's apartment searching, looking for another partner or something like that. So that's one fundamental shift, just the demographics of it all. The other one, which we can't ignore, is the internet. And so the era of which you dated someone who you knew, or someone knew someone who knew them, you went to the same college, or someone introduced you to each other, or you met at a party. That still happens. That hasn't gone. But there's another completely different world in which people are meeting each other from around the world, thanks to dating apps and online dating sites and things like Meetup.com and Facebook, who are bringing all these hot people you dated ages ago, and they like send you a Facebook request or start following you on Insta, and you're like, oh, who's this person? So the internet has widened what's called the field of eligibles. Like what that field looked like of who you could date was much smaller, just because the reality that there was no internet. And then along with fundamental demographic shifts, the eligibles are different now too. So me as a 40-something woman, I tell men in their 50s and 60s, don't put your son in your dating profile with you. I could date you or your son. And if you don't keep it together, I might be dipping into the younger one. So keep it together. And so like even who we can date, age-wise, nationality, ethnicity, geography, like our actual field of eligibles is ginormous now. And so what I hear from people of all ages are saying just kind of that like being stifled by the availability. Like, how do you choose between this German guy who lives here and I've been dating for a while, or this younger Portuguese person who I met via a friend of a friend, or this like the just wide field of eligibles, which could be fun. And and tell people embrace it in a sense. It could be overwhelming, to be sure. Anytime you've got a lot of different choices to choose from, that can feel very overwhelming. I think the thing that can be comforting too is it's a way to kind of figure out what really works for you. I mentioned sexuality too. There's a whole entire era of like later life lesbians and later life gay men, people who in their day would have never dreamed that was possible or whatever. And now even as like living in their, retirement home are now saying like, oh, I can have a different life that I want. So I say, you only get one chance in life, even if you believe in reincarnation. You only get one shot at life in this carnation with these people around you once. And so the ability for you to enjoy that and have pleasure and be happy is on you 100%. So go for it.
Yeah, I would echo that, and that's what I meant when I referred to the expansion of possibilities and broadening your horizons. The social apps, the dating apps, really do expand your options in ways. I've met and dated people that I never would have comprehended or imagined that I would have met or dated just a few years ago. So that's definitely one aspect. The other aspect, just speaking for myself, being, slightly older, I'm not interested in getting married. And so that it can complicate or confound or confine your dating experience. You have to be forthright. You got to be candid with folks up front, what you're looking for in a relationship. And, like Tawana said earlier, a lot of times, even though you are older, people still don't know what they want. And, you have to be aware of that as well. You got to be conscious of that. And again, hopefully, folks can deal with one another in a transparent way where nobody is hurt or blindsided by something. But that's something that definitely impacts the dating experience for me. The last thing I'll mention that changes is COVID. I was blowing and going, really from 2018 to 2020. And then, at least in the States, the whole dichotomy just changed. People were a lot more, closed and didn't want to really engage, and they wanted testing up front. I found, ironically, I was still traveling a lot during COVID, but I found that a lot of folks in other countries weren't as careful. Maybe this is just a one-off my experience, but weren't as careful, and was a little more open to engaging and continuing the date the way it was before COVID entered. But COVID definitely impacted the dating scene in my experience.
I want to follow up on that, Keith, but we can't see your eyes. Can you tilt your camera just a little bit? There
I'm
we
sorry.
go. There we go.
My eyes are always closed. It looks like I'm high or something. I'm not
So-
high.
Are you?
The camera was just coming down here. So when you tell, you date females?
Yes.
Okay. When you tell females that, okay, I'm interested, but I'm not interested in getting married ever.
Yeah.
What's the craziest response you've heard?
I had one hostile response. That was in Houston, just saying that I was crazy, and that I was insecure, and this was on the first date, the first meeting, and that I was irrational. My perspective was irrational. Now, of course, I just attribute that to, it wasn't what she was expecting, and she didn't want to hear that. And so she had a visceral response to me saying that, particularly on the first date. But most people are taken aback by my being candid and saying, I usually don't say never, or I qualify it, I say never, but I'd be very surprised if I got married again. And I don't really want to do that. What's more controversial is I don't want to have a monogamous relationship. And that a lot of times is met with rejection, just straight out rejection, which is fine. Some people take the approach that, okay, that's fine, we can test this out, and I'll see if I can change you. And that usually doesn't work. Hasn't worked yet. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But there are some people that are into it, and that's wonderful when you find somebody that says, okay, I can deal with that, and I'm fine with that, and that works perfectly for me.
I say when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you change someone and then they're resentful, then what?
That's problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
Then what? So so first you don't want to get married. Home Chick said you're irrational. Has there been anyone outside of the United States? Have you dated people where English isn't their first language?
Yes, I have. That's been tough. That has been hard. In particular, only one person who was Portuguese, and she cut it off. I think she was just frustrated trying to communicate with me, which again that can happen.
Okay, so she didn't know enough English.
She knew English. She was actually a translator, but I think it was frustrating for her. I could see how I might appear to be the lazy American, the prototypical lazy American that isn't putting in the effort to understand the culture or the language, or and getting that done, and them losing patience with that. So I completely understand. I get it.
And what's the craziest response you've heard to, and oh, by the way, you ain't gonna be the only one, honey?
Uh, I don't, they just digest it. I don't recall a real crazy response to that. Maybe because, again, they don't want to necessarily tell me what's going through their mind. And, again, that's fine. However they respond is fine, as long as it's honest and candid and gives me a clear signal as to where their head is at.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Interesting. Interesting. Tawana, what are your parameters? And do you see a difference in how American men approach this thing and how other men who are not American or North American, I'm going to say, because I probably not too much difference between Canadians.
No, very good question. So my parameters as far as like dating, I tend to be monogamous. I do tend to be monogamous, dating men, age range anywhere from depends on what you mean by dating.
From
If, if
19 to
if we're more
what?
flexible about what we mean by dating, you don't have to speak English, and you can be 28. That's fine. But if we mean like relationship kind of things, then I tend to kind of be much more into like 35 to 55 range ish, but flexibility there. I've dated men from so many, even before I lived abroad, I was dating people from different countries and different cultures. My most recent boyfriend, like long term, multi year relationship, was from Ireland, and I was dating him when I was living in Washington, D.C. And so you can always find people from other cultures, different languages, and all of those things to date, even if you're not specifically abroad at the time as well. So,
Right.
yeah, so those are the kinds of things. And then as far as how men approach it in the US compared to abroad, I don't actually see much of a difference in terms of behavior. There are wonderful, delightful creatures in every culture. Kiss all of them. And there are assholes in every culture too. Stay away from them. And so I don't think that there's any overarching kind of like men from this country will be better than this or whatever, because it depends on what you like. There's that saying, that's like Dita Von Teese, you can be the ripest, juiciest peach in the world. And there's still somebody who just doesn't like peaches. That's not about you. It's just you got to find
Right,
what's
right.
good for you and what works, right? So I don't think there's any overarching like North American men are this and this is good and this works or that. The only thing I will say is slightly kind of across the board different. This thing that we even call dating, that has a longer, more entrenched history in the United States than other cultures. So this going out on dates, you'll hear Europeans say, we see that in movies, the way that it is, right? You go on dates and you give her your varsity jacket and all, like the whole dating culture, right? There's something that's very distinctly American about part of it. But as far
Right.
as like hooking up, meeting people, well, being in relationships and how you come together, that's universal.
Okay.
And the reason why I ask is because I've heard from a friend of mine who does a lot of house sitting. And she said when she does a house sit in America, she knows it's going to be the wife who shows her around the house and tells her what's what and here's all the rules and this is what I need done and da da da. But when she does it abroad, it's 50-50 on whether it's going to be if it's a opposite sex couple, whether it's going to be the man or the woman, giving her the instructions, telling her what's what, and doing all of those things. So I thought that was interesting. That,
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so that could be due to a couple different things that aren't exclusive to dating. One, the United States has a higher culture of violence, including sexual violence. And I think most couples would say they'd feel more comfortable with a woman, we'll show around or whatever so they feel comfortable. We don't want them to feel awkward or anything like that. I
Mm.
think part of that could be tagging the violence in the United States culture. And so, like, I hear men, even single men, talk about like not wanting to come across as the creepy guy or feeling much more on pins and needle and like being much more comfortable making sure that they're much more forward about thinking through how can I not come across as the creepy person who's going to scare the mess out of somebody, like
Right.
being much more cognizant of given the high level of violence around and what happens, how can I make sure people understand that I'm not this person who's going to be this awful human being. And so there could be part of that. House sitting, you're talking about sleeping in someone's house and coming on, so that could be part of it. And then the other thing, as far as domesticity of what happens when you're in the household, that's separate from like just dating overall. There tends to be much more parity, even within the US. And Black American culture, men are much more likely to contribute to the household, like things like cooking, cleaning up, doing all of this, are more likely to report that they contribute to that than white American men. And so it's the kinds of things of like how households work and who does what in the household is different even within cultures in the United States. But then there's also a money factor. where there's much more equal financial contributions and much more equal pay outside of the United States in some of these countries as well. So that could be a mixture of different things that they're picking
That's
up
interesting.
there.
That's interesting. All right.
So the black men that report contributing to the household, we don't know if they actually do contribute more to the household, right? Making that distinction.
Well, and here's the thing. With any kind of social science research, there's always a discrepancy between what people think they do, what they actually do, and what they tell you that they do.
Yeah.
And so even when you report, there are differences between how, for example, how many people women have slept with compared to how many people men have slept with. It's what people say they do, what people actually think they do, and what they tell you they do can be very different. So the answers you get also have a social coding about what's considered acceptable to say.
Well, I think it's lovely that black men want to believe that.
That's a start.
Maybe they actually do. Maybe they do. Who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows?
But the research does say that they do.
Who knows? So Isan says, is it tougher dating abroad?
I would say no, definitely not. Again, I'm dating women. They perceive me as being rich, and I'm sure I'm intriguing because I'm American as well. So there's some curiosity with regard to that. So
I'm going to turn the question around. So they asked if it's tougher dating abroad. Is it easier dating abroad?
It's just different.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's easier. It's just different. I mentioned, the language challenges and the language barrier. Culturally, there are differences in terms of expectations. Culturally, there are differences in terms of behavioral stuff. I find, and again, these are anecdotal. I don't know if it really corresponds to a general trend, but the women that I've dated abroad tend to be more solicitous of me. But who knows? Who's to say?
Twana?
Yeah. So the rich thing, we also have to. There is something to be said too about like when you remove yourself from the country of your birth or where you grew up, or sometimes it's the same or not, but remove yourself from living in the United States and go live as an expat or immigrant, whichever word you prefer, but as an American living in another country. You are in a different environment and you are a different person. And so I heard you say they perceive me as rich. Your income based on Portuguese income, probably you are rich. Yeah. And so there's also the just kind of understanding too of like when we change our location, we're also changing a lot of things about like what happened. Like take me for example, me as a woman dating Manhattan. I lived in New York, DC. I'm from Chicago, proud Illinois originally. I moved a lot, lived in New York and DC most of my adult life in the United States. So me as a woman living and dating in Manhattan, the likelihood that a man that I date makes more money than me is probably high. And that he makes significantly more than I do could be very high. I lived in Midtown, so it could be significantly different. Me as an American woman living and dating in Portugal, the likelihood that the man that I would date, if he's Portuguese, that I make more money than him is higher, that I would make more money than he would. I haven't changed as a person. I haven't changed my career. I haven't changed anything. But when you remove yourself from one environment to another, there's the cultural aspect. So even though Twana here is the same as Twana there, then there's a question of how does a man in any country feel about dating someone who makes more money than he does? Like that's a different cultural context to consider as well. And so I don't know that I could answer that it's easier or harder. And my immediate knee-jerk reaction when you ask the question was to say it's harder because everything in life when you first start in a new country is harder. Figuring out how to get from point A to B, figuring out how the health insurance things works, making yourself able to be understood and communicating. Like the first 12 months are hard as hell. And a lot of people don't actually talk through that. We're having this great time in that. But there's also, we all know, there's also the difficulties of setting up a new life in a new country. And so, some ways, dating can be very hard of that because language can come up. Maybe you don't know the language as well. Even when you both speak the same language, uh, it's what was it, Churchill, that said the United States and England are two countries, divided by a common language. So even when you speak the same language, the way in which you communicate and the way in which you communicate things like pain, anger, hurt, happiness, excitement, the way in which you communicate that is very culturally tagged too. And so it can be very hard when you're talking about dating and the straight facts of dating. We're not just talking about, oh, whatever, but like opening yourself up and being vulnerable in a country where you already feel vulnerable because you don't have your people, you don't have your culture, you don't have your language, you don't have any of that stuff with you, stripped away. And now here you are trying to form a real, genuine connection with another person. That can be difficult when you throw these other things in, and or it could be easier when it's a country with less violence. It's a country where you feel like you can be yourself more authentically and be embraced for that, when it's a country with a bunch of things. So it's like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Some ways I feel like it's much harder. Some ways I feel like it's much easier. And so I feel like I just kind of like take each day with it. Not that I don't do it at home, I'm just forced and violently reminded to do it more. It's just remember that you're constantly learning and relearning and growing every single day. And so I'm just taking in new information.
Yeah.
I think about everything here in Portugal, including my dating life.
Yeah. I think people underestimate that change too. You were going to ask a question. What, Krishan?
Yeah.
Okay. I like meeting people organically versus online dating. Do you find that it is easier or harder to date organically?
I love dating. You take that first, Keith, because I get excited.
I'll take it first.
You go first,
always
please.
have the direct one-line answers. I find it harder, again, because of the language barrier, and I don't know really how to properly approach somebody that isn't from the States or where we have a common cultural background or common experiences to lean on. So online dating is much easier for me to date international folks. So that's my response. Yeah.
I'm super outgoing and I have zero filter between my brain and my mouth. It just literally slips from here to there. Like there's no stop. It just don't pass go. Just go straight, go. And so I find it easy either way. I just find it very different. So I hit on men. I pick up men. I'm like literally am fine, like saying, and I do often tell people you're very handsome, or I love your smile, or you look really great in that outfit. So I find it easy to just I flirt with everybody all the time. Like I find it nice to like just be. It's a social lubricant of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So I love all of those things, and I find it easy to meet people organically, and so that could be fun. The difference between online dating is I find people might be more likely to approach me online who might be shyer doing it in person. So for example, I'll read it to you too. I'm on online dating apps and I feel like such a jerk because like I download them and then I get overwhelmed and I have 4,000 likes on Tindr. There's no freaking way I'm going through 4,000 profiles to decide whether I like it's not gonna happen. So and I put my phone down. But every now and then I get a sweet little message from someone. And so here's one. And then this person wrote to me and said, I love your energy. Like, 'cause I have videos, I have pictures, like everything. I say, show people all of you. I talk a lot. I'm the youngest child, attachment issues. I want to bond with everybody. And like, I like being outgoing and talking to. So you see that in my profile. So my profiles look and sound like me. All the pictures are current, all that. And he wrote, I love your energy. And so I was like, oh, it's this person. His picture was fine as hell, 6'3", tall, half European, half Moroccan, bright blue eyes, dark brown eyelashes, so you notice them more, gorgeous, all these things. And she said,
That's not
I
a
said,
real picture.
no, it is. It's verified. It's like, yeah.
That's much,
And then I asked, oh, and here's a pro tip, people, pro tip. So not only make sure you don't have to, things I do to kind of filter out the bullshit is one, go for the verified people because they do this thing where you have to hold your phone up, do this, post a picture doing different things to verify. Doesn't mean it always works, but it does reduce the likelihood that it's a bot or fake pictures. So that, and the first thing I ask people is, are you on Instagram? Like I ask them for a social media profile because then you see a real profile has friends, it has them interacting with people, it has their full name usually, it has pictures that look like the pictures that are there. So I start by asking for social media profiles. And if they're like, no, I'm not on social media, unmatch. No, you're a liar is what you are. Everybody's on something. So I just unmatch immediately. And so cute guy, he said all that. I said, I like your energy too. You're super cute. Seriously, you're very attractive. Though you're a bit too young for my comfort. This one was 26. I'm 48. I said, you're a little, I can't, beating down the 20 somethings in my online profile. I'm like being mobbed by 20 somethings in my online dating profiles. So he says, I said, though you're a bit too young for my comfort. I'm 48, just in case he like went by and didn't pay attention. He wrote back, I know. Gen Z is bold as hell. Bold as hell. He wrote back, I know. He said, and I could see why you would say that, but hear me out. Age is not a priority for me. I'd rather much focus on chemistry, and life is too short to worry about silly things like numbers. He's like, and thanks for the compliment. I like your profile and I love your smile. So it's like, online dating, what I find is if I saw this 26-year-old guy random, I don't know that he would be as bold to step to me like he did online as he would in person, right? And so it's like, I feel like they can be different things. I actually encourage people who are either new to dating, either they just don't date a lot, or new to it, fresh out of a relationship or something like that. Online dating is a nice, can be, I'll qualify that, can be a nice, safe alternative to throwing yourself in the dating world and seeing how you feel. It's like you can look at all these profiles, decide which ones you want to like or not. Of the ones who respond to you, you can unmatch the ones you're not interested in. You can try being more vulnerable than you're used to. Ask questions that you would usually think in your head. I wonder if he's ask those questions. You can kind of use as a way to kind of warm your way up to getting back there organically, right? So I don't think online is either better or worse. And I tend to like them both. Like me, the difference, I think organically it's nice. You can see right away what the vibe is, how like that, the person's right there. I think online, what I notice is a lot of men who probably wouldn't approach me or wouldn't have the confidence to approach me in person, especially these young 20 somethings or the majority of the people who are hitting on me on online dating profiles. I'm like, I am old enough to be your mama. They're like, no, you're not. I'm like, technically I am. Like literally, technically I am. But anyway.
Yeah, and not even a teenage mom. I mean,
No.
like 26. That's younger than my youngest.
Younger than my nephews. And I like saw my nephews be born. So that's like
Right. My youngest son turned 31 yesterday. Yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Happy birthday.
Don't show me pictures of them. Like,
Happy birthday, Mari. Love you.
So I have one comment, and then I see Henry has a question. This is a quick comment. Twana mentioned that she flirts and she hits on people organically. I think there is a difference between males doing that with females and females doing it. I think it's much more well received from males if a woman does that because it doesn't happen all the time. And if I was to do it, it's probably discounted or poo-pooed or even taken offense at. So I just wanted to raise that point.
Interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know if anyone in the chat is LGBTQ, but I wonder if that is the same with men and women with women. All right. So Henry says, do language differences offer a greater challenge when it comes to dating in a different country? We've kind of answered that, but if you want to expound a little bit on what you've already said. I think the thing that is really interesting is not just the language, but what the expectations are behind feelings and how they are perceived and received. Right? Like, okay, so this is a bad example, but I'm going to use it. Twan and I have a British friend. We were playing spades one night, and it took me 2.5 hours to realize she was trash talking.
Proper trash talk.
It was British trash talk. And then when I looked at, I'm like, wait,
She's talking.
she's been talking trash all this time.
And he
So
gets
someone
lost in
could say
translation.
she's really reserved, but she's not reserved.
No.
She was talking that trash
Properly.
in a British way.
Yeah.
And
Europeans have a way of doing that. I was out with a bunch of friends on, what day is it? Sunday. It was Friday night. I was out with a bunch of friends, and one of them is French. This guy I know, don't know him that well, but his name is, and I can't say it correctly, apparently. His name is Mathieu, and Mathieu, however you say that. And I said, oh, Mathieu. He's like, it's okay. You can call me Matt. I go, no, I'll say it, Mathieu. He goes, it's fine. It's a very difficult word to say. And so they have this way of being kind of like trash talking or kind of like whatever. And then I was like, no, it's not a difficult word. It's fine. Like, it's just, they have a way of being much more, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, even when you speak the same language, things can be lost in translation, as they say. I highly encourage people to learn languages, though. The beauty of it, too, is that just like travel from point A to point B, expand your world, what's possible, ways of seeing things. Learning languages does that as well, because every language has different words or different ways in communicating it, which is related to their culture, too. And so Dutch, for example, when you say, I love you, it's the same as, it's the word is hold. I hold this. I hold this. Houden is the verb to hold. I take hold of you is the literal translation, is I love you. And more in, say, French or Spanish or something, it's probably not as direct. And so I think when you learn a language too, you also learn the ways in which the people who speak it think in a way, because it's communicating meaning. And so I love learning languages and encourage people to do so.
Yeah, and it exercises the brain. Ronak
Yes.
asks, are you poly?
What is poly? Is that you marry more than one person?
That could be, but polyamorous?
Yes. So a couple different ways of thinking about it. We used to, and in some ways, think of sexual orientation of there is a thing called a man and there's a thing called a woman, and there are only these two things. If you are a man and you like other men, you are gay. If you're a man and you like women, you are straight. If you're a man and you like exactly both men and women, then you're what's called bisexual. So that's, I think, what a lot of people grew up thinking of, like orientation and thinking more about like attraction, right? I think that as we get a more sophisticated and complicated understanding of gender, so including trans people in the conversation, right? Then how do you describe a cisgender man who's attracted to both trans men and like who's both attracted to trans men and cisgender women and prefers to be in relationships with more than one person at a time. So that's a lot of different things. We're thinking differently about gender. So men, women, transgender men, transgender women. Like we're thinking more differently and more inclusively, which is good about gender. And then also we're thinking more dynamically, inclusively about relationships. So if someone says, I am monogamous, that means when I am in a relationship, I am in a relationship with one person at a time. I describe myself as monogamous, but I've had a lot of different partners over my life from dating in the last 20, 30 years. And long term with this person, we break up. Long term with that person, we break. So serial monogamy, right?
Right.
If someone says that they're into non-monogamous relationships, then it means I am interested in being in a relationship with more than one person at a time. That can look very different. Non-monogamous relationships could look like I have two partners, and that is all. I have a primary partner and I have a secondary partner. The three of us are in a relationship together. We're exclusive with each other. We're not dating
Mhm.
anyone else. We're not seeing anyone else, and we're not like interested in other people. We collectively are in this committed relationship. It's not monogamous because there's more than just the two of us, right? So it's more like a non-monogamous, polyamorous, possibly relationship. Non-monogamy can also look like I have a boyfriend. My boyfriend is bi. My boyfriend has a boyfriend. I'm not in a relationship with his gay boyfriend because
Right.
his boyfriend's gay. He's not interested in me. And so my boyfriend has a boyfriend. And so that's another way of being in a non monogamous relationship. And so I think as we've become more accepting, more inclusive, and more just honestly real, because trans people existed forever, non monogamous relationships have existed forever.
That's
We're
for
just
sure.
becoming much more authentic in the ways in
Mhm.
which we don't stigmatize and we actually acknowledge different types of relationships.
Okay. So, what would my answer be?
Depends on
Given
so
all that, it's so
Well, it
complex.
depends on how you are partnering with people. Polyamorous is just being open and being like it's polyamorous liking, right? So we're
Hmm.
polyamorous is that we're open to being in a relationship of some sort, like amorously. When we talk more about monogamy and non-monogamy, that tends to be much more relationships. So I can be dating multiple people at the same time, and I would say I'm very much polyamorous in the way that I love people, right? So I'm dating
Right.
a lot of people. Maybe I wouldn't say we're in a relationship, but we're dating. Like it could look like that, right? Or
Yeah.
it could look like I am coupled up, but me and my partner are open, right? Because that's a whole different dynamic. You could have a non-monogamous closed relationship, like the one I gave you example of. You could also have a non-monogamous open relationship, which is I am dating my partner, they're really into cuckolding. And so they want to see me be intimate with other men. And so they're not interested in being with other people, but they get really off on seeing
Yeah.
me be intimate with other people. And so we have an open relationship, and that's what it looks like for us. I'm with other people, and that turns them on. So we're open in the sense that, like, that's what it is for us. You could also have an open relationship, which is look, you're a grown ass person. I'm a grown ass person. Do what you want, but don't put it in my face. That could also be a
Mhm.
different kind of way of being open. Or you could say we're grown ass people, and that's fine. We agree that we're going to do what we want, and that has no diminishing on our
Bearing.
relationship with each other. We are in a
Yeah.
relationship. We're also humans, and so we're interested in different things. And there's no one right way, and none of them are more biological or is another. There are gay pairings in every animal culture. There's monogamous. Penguins tend to be monogamous. Lions love group, let's call it activities. Lions tend to enjoy group activity a lot. And so
Is
it
that right?
depends, even in the animal kingdom. And humans, let's not forget, are animals. We're mammals. We are in the animal kingdom with everything else.
Right.
Specifically, we're mammals. And so everything that we do, the other animals are doing as well.
Yeah.
So all of it is quote, quote,
So,
natural.
so Keith, would you say it's more like you're not in? Do you consider yourself in relationships, or you just hang out with
No, not
people
not
and
really in relationships. No,
so
not. I,
it's not a relationship. It's just
yeah.
hang out,
Yeah.
get
And
together.
again, it depends on how you define relationship. I consider it a relationship, but the public, which really doesn't matter, but the public may not consider that a relationship. But there is intimacy and there is, companionship in each of my, trysts, if you will. And I just have multiple. I just have
I love that word, tryst.
several of them, you know,
Okay.
and
Polyamorous.
you know, so maybe I am polyamorous. I don't know. I have no idea, and I don't know what they do, how they conduct it. Yeah.
So Eson
Yes.
one,
The answer
Eson,
is yes.
Eson one is asking.
Yes.
He's asking you, Keith, or is it she? He or
We
she?
don't know. Isan one, Ben. We don't know if you're male or female, so I always say they.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keith,
But yes.
would you be open to a platonic relationship with a woman you may be attracted to since you do not want marriage?
Absolutely. And I am. I mean, you know, relationships with folks from work that I find attractive, or from college or school, you know, or just somebody that I met, um, who may, for whatever reason, not be interested in me. And we have friendships. So, yeah.
Phyllis says Keith is right. I have no desire to be married again. Wait, where is it? Where is it? I got to read this. I've been divorced since 2006, and the men I've met always think I'm not being truthful. I'm trying to leave the USA. I ain't trying to get no husband.
She's gonna be married by next year. You never know.
Well, I mean, they say what? Married men live longer and single women live longer.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm going
This is
down.
about division of labor stuff. Men tend to benefit from marriage in the United States. Men benefit from marriage. So when you look at reported levels of happiness, longevity, all of these things, married men tend to live longer in the United States. This looks like everything from women being the one who reminds to go to doctor's appointments, sets doctor appointments, make sure like we need to actually eat some vegetables, like all of these kinds of things. And so women tend to take on that emotional, physical, and labor of all of these kinds of things that support someone living longer. And so their male partners, so straight American women, their male partners are benefiting from that in terms of longer longevity and reported levels of happiness. But married women, from doing all of that, actually have lower life expectancy and lower level of happiness than single women. Because single women aren't doing all of that stuff. But single men don't have the woman doing it for them, so they report lower levels. So single women, happier, living longer. Married men, sadder, living shorter lives. I mean, single men, sadder, living. Yeah. And then married, it's the other way.
Unless you got lots of partners. He's out there. You remember the old movies with like the pilot who'd come in and the stewardesses. This is in the days when we called them stewardesses, would show up at their house like, oh, it's Monday, it's time for Jill. Oh, it's Tuesday, it's time for Kathy.
What movies were these, and are they available on Netflix?
They're the 60s or the 70s, the swinging 60s.
Yes, exactly.
The era of key parties, all that stuff. Okay.
It says American cis hetero Black women domestically and abroad seem less comfortable dating out, as they tend to be so race loyal. Oh, interesting. Yeah. What are ways Black women can nudge themselves out and into the world?
Yeah. I joke that my throat tastes like vanilla and butterscotch and dulce de leche. So I've been fine exploring the world for much of my life. And so I think it's fine. I think part of it is I am very, very centered on my personal happiness. And so if a partner is going to treat me right and be just a good, kind, wonderful soul for me, I don't really care. And then I have to be physically attracted to them, right? But like, as long as I find them physically attractive, and so like there's a sexual attraction to that person and they're a good human being, I don't really get hung up on like ethnicity or nationality or age. 26 is a bit young, but generally speaking, I would say I don't really get hung up on a lot of those things. And so I say, there's this great viral clip from the past, like maybe 2-3 weeks. Timothy Chalamet says, your world shifts when you realize that life doesn't come at you, it comes from you. And so as you start thinking really about your dating life and what you want and all of these things, thinking, what are you thinking you deserve? What are you putting up with? What are you not willing to put up with? What are you standing by principle-wise? I've known I don't want children. Since I was a child, I was a little girl, and I remember finding out like kids didn't just happen. You had to do something. I was like, well, I'm not having kids. And my family's like, oh, well, when you're an adult, you'll change your mind. I've never wanted those things, and I still don't have them, thankfully. Don't want them, never wanted them. I wanted to do what I did do, travel, see the world, have my fun, spend my money on brunches and cocktails with my friends and things like that. And so, like, I think the more that you live into your truth and get honest about what you want. Maybe you do decide that, like, okay, the most important thing to me is that person is the same ethnicity and nationality that I am. That trumps whether or not they're kind. That's more important to me whether or not they see and understand me at that soul level. That's more important to me than whether they're a good financial contributor to this relationship. That's more important to me. All the different things, whether or not they want to have children, whether or not they want to get married, whether or not they live in my state, like all of these kinds of things. It's like put it all on the table of all the things that you have to decide you want in your life. What are you willing to put on that table of this is non-negotiable? And it could be that that is it, right? Because you could be saying the other side is one of the things I'm not putting up with is someone who doesn't truly see me as a valued, equal person and understand me and my culture. And for me, this is the shape that comes in. You can decide that, and that's equally valid. I just say, like, be really honest about your table of what's on the table and what's off the table, right? Like, what's
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah, I would, couple of things. I think what Tawana says about being honest with yourself, first and foremost, is critical. That's hard to do, though. You got to be honest with yourself in a vacuum, and you have to think about the ways that you have been indoctrinated by the public, by your family, by peers, by expectations of what a loving relationship may look like. You just gotta move aside. Religion's another one.
Oh,
You got
yeah.
to set
Mhm.
aside and decide what you want to do, what is most important to you, and pursue that. And I know that's easier said than done. Those bonds or those chains are really difficult to break. And I would aver it's harder for a woman to break those chains than it is for a man. A man, in our world, has a little more freedom to explore, to do whatever he wants. Whereas a woman, there are more expectations or duties or obligations put upon them, like being loyal to the race. I won't mention any names. I know, my female family members in my family, some are just not attracted to people that aren't black. And others, they just feel this obligation to
Right.
be with a black man. I'm speaking about the female members of my family. And that is really, really, really tough. If you start with that obligation, quote unquote obligation, puts you in a difficult position in terms of getting respect from a black man or being able to rationally or objectively look at, is this relationship healthy or constructive for you? So I mean, I empathize with that whole thing, and frankly, I was raised, do not bring home a white girl or date, outside of the race. My mom, who's in the other room there, she's eased up on that a little bit. She's not as hard on my grandsons or my granddaughters as she was on me about that, or at least that's how I received it and how I felt about that. And there was just no way I was going to marry somebody that wasn't African American. And that could play into why I don't want to get married now, because I am dating a lot of people that aren't black. So
Hmm.
who
Hmm.
knows? It's so complicated, which is why you really got to focus on just keeping your own counsel, and don't even go to your friends, your close friends, and just do what you want to do and what makes you feel good.
Right.
I think that, a lot of us don't live our lives for us. We live our lives for other people and other people's expectations of us. From the jobs
100%.
we take, from the education that we get, from the cars that we drive, the house that we buy, all of that stuff are based upon what people expect us to have to show that we're doing X, Y, and Z the right way, right? And for our parents. And for me, you know, y'all know Rick is not my first husband. I'm not his first wife. And I think if I didn't have a Black son, I would have been more open. But once I divorced my Black son's dad, is like, okay, I need a Black man to help prepare him for this thing called America.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had not met a white guy or a non-Black American guy even that understood what it means to be a Black man in America. And it ain't like, it's not pretty, right? Like there's certain things that we all have to go through, and especially Black men in America. And unless you have been there, you just don't get it.
I have no idea. Yeah.
And so that's why y'all who are watching, who are not dating, but you're still watching, if you have kids, get them out. Get them out. Had I been able to get,
dating or not, no.
Right, exactly. Like get your kids out of America. Get your brown babies out of America. So, because we have been jacked up by the oppression and nonsense of America, and we have to undo all of that and detox.
Well, I'll push back on that just a tiny bit, because I agree. I do agree. The only thing that I do want to say is that, like, I feel very, and it's hard, and the way that this relates to dating and what I said earlier about, like, Timothy Chalamet's life comes from you too. We also have to be honest about this sense of deservedness and self-love. Because not only what's on the table, what's not on the table, what do you want, all of these things, but really get clear about how do you feel about yourself? Do you like yourself? Do you like how you look? Do you like your facial features? Do you like your name? Do you like your culture? Like, do you like yourself? Like all of these things, like it all starts from what's inside. One thing that I will say that I'm incredibly proud of and that I do love, and that's one thing that the US is not perfect. No country is, right? But something that I loved when I lived in the US is that my former president, my current vice president, my council member when I lived in Silver Spring, Maryland, Black woman with natural hair too, my veterinarian, my math teacher when I was 8th grade, my gynecologist, these were all Black people. These were all Black Americans. And I don't know that you can go to many European countries, and I hear this from Portuguese people themselves, French people themselves, German people themselves, where you'll have that. Well, you'll have that, like, we have been, like, we are indigenous to the United States. We're North American people. We all come from somewhere else because Native Americans were slaughtered. We know that. Indigenous people were slaughtered. So everybody who's living in the US, for the most part, vast majority of these people are not from there. But as far as, like, us being North American in the way that Jamaicans are Jamaican, they were brought to Jamaica just like we were brought to North America. And so that sense of pride of, like, an understanding of where I'm from. I was born in Chicago. My family's a great migration family. My great grandparents were Mississippi. They came out, like, that's part of American culture. The foods that I love to eat and know how to cook and enjoy, and the way in which we do things called girlfriending, the way we talk and use language. The fact that I like the way that my hair looks when it grows out of my head, and I don't see anything wrong with that. The way that I like my dark, not only Black, but dark skin. I like my skin. Like, I like who I am as a person. And I grew up in a culture where there were people around me who were succeeding and people around me who liked who they were as a person. And I'm grateful for that. Like, I don't feel like my entire life in the US was just awful and horrible and the people were bad. I think that a lot of it was the levels of violence in particular, the violent racism, those two go together too, and all of these things that the US offers are a national shame, like literally a national shame, you know? And it's like the things that we did well, it's like it's hard to find another culture where the Black diasporic community is as part of the fiber of that place and celebrate it and lift it up and present in all socioeconomic strata, and not in that, like, talented to the bullshit, but just in the what you want to do, you can do if that's what you're interested. There's no one not letting you, in the sense of there's no one that even looks like you that does that. That doesn't happen in the US to the same extent that I think it happens in some other countries. So I don't
So
know.
I have two questions. Sorry, Halisi.
No, sorry.
Did you always feel that way, or was it a process or a journey? And do you think you are unique as a Black or African American woman with those perspectives?
No, I did not. Well, what? So many questions. The question about did I always feel this way? Absolutely not. I didn't always like the way that I looked. I didn't always like that. I think one of my favorite quotes that I read in any book of all time is Roxane Gay in her book Hunger, that talks about her being assaulted by multiple boys when she was a child, and what that did to her, and how she ate to just kind of like shield her body, basically. Like, beautiful book called Hunger by Roxane Gay. Amazing. Also wrote the book Bad Feminists and Others. She's amazing. She has this line in there that says, living in a body is hard. And I was like, that resonated so much, because I think so many people resonate with that. You don't have to have, doesn't have to be about weight, doesn't have to be about the color of your skin, doesn't have to be a lot. Living in a body is hard. And when you grow up in a country that can be misogynistic, that can be racist, and you're a little girl and you're getting all these messages, right? Like, living in a body can be hard. So me saying this as a woman in my 40s, who is single and dating, fellas, who's single and dating, a woman in my 40s, me saying this, I didn't feel like that when I was 8. You know, it's like there's a lot of like growth and healing and therapy. That
Healing.
this is the
That's what I'm
outgrowth
saying.
of that.
That's what I'm saying. And so I see a difference in African American kids who get the international experience and their confidence about who they are, their place in the world, their lens, and everything like that. And that will definitely make a difference in how they choose partners, how they date in the future. All that insecurity, all that game playing and stuff is not going to necessarily be erased, but it's probably lessened. Probably lessened. Then I wish I could have gotten our kids out. Have you ran into a situation where a potential date may have seen you as exotic in a fetishy kind of way?
That's for you, Twana. That ain't for
Oh,
me.
me? Oh, for me. Is this for me? Celeste Ray, we love you. Look, Celeste Ray, we're answering your question. So a couple different things. First, yes, that's happened. I think the question was, have I ever had it or have I been worried about that? Has happened, you know, like people, and this is why I think it's a good question. In addition to, if you're doing online, asking people, hey, do you have social profiles? And looking at those to see, is this a human? And is that human a match for what the profile looks like, kind of thing? Another really great question, once you actually start dating someone and you or going on dates or spending time with them, and they're like, seem to be interested in you, explicitly ask them, what do you like about me? Like, ask them that. And if the question is, and if the answers are things like, you know, oh, kissing your lips is just so whatever, or your skin is gorgeous, or your whatever is gorgeous, and none of those things are about you as a human being, like you as a person, that can be one of the tags of like red flag. This could be fetishism, could be, right? So that one sense of like making sure that you actually not only ask, believe them when they say, right? Like Haley's comment earlier, when people tell you who they are, when people tell you what they like about you, believe them for what they say. And if none of it is about your spirit and your soul, and all of it is about anyone who looks like you would have that same stuff, then it may not be someone who's actually interested in you for you. So that's one of those things, kind of scan for that. And then exotic fetishism aside, like exotic part aside, fetishes aren't necessarily a bad thing, broadly speaking, right? Like this idea of like being sexually attracted to, like, people have shoe fetishes, feet fetishes, all different kinds of
Well,
things.
we
And
were
so
talking about that.
Yeah.
yep. So I think sometimes when people think that like, oh, fetish, it's a stigmatizing that we tend to do of the kink community in general, that fetishes all are horrible kind of thing, you know? And it's like, there is something like, you date someone. I remember the first time I saw a penis, I saw a member, let's keep this PG. The first time that I saw a body part that resembles a hot dog on someone who was the
Almost
shade
a
of
hot
8.5 by 11, a piece of paper. I was like, it's pink. It's like pink. And so there was this like curiosity, or it's a whole different. And so it's not just a one-way kind of thing. If you're dating someone who doesn't look like you've always looked like, you too will find yourself being the person who's like, well, that's different, or I didn't know this, or oh, it's like, like you'll find things that you too are doing. And that's not necessarily clocking as fetish, which is why I differentiate between fetishes, generally speaking, and then also liking someone. So I could say, hey, that hot dog is peach. It's kind of peachish pink. And then when the hot dog gets excited, it's almost kind of purple because all the blood is flowing to the hot dog. So it kind of looks purple. And so I can notice that and comment on that or whatever. But if the person asked me, what do you like about me? My answer isn't your purple hot dog. Like, that's not how that works. And so you can notice differences between people and acknowledge it and even say it. I think for me, the problem was when it becomes exotic fetishism to the point that it's dehumanizing.
Humanizing. And
Right.
I
Because
think
then
that's
you're
what
not
it is.
actually liking the person as a human. You're liking the person as a thing,
Thanks.
Right.
exotic thing that's interesting.
Right.
A caricature.
And
Exactly.
Yeah.
so women can't have I guess it would seem to me that women could fetishize Black men. Women of other cultures could fetishize Black men in a way it might look as ultra virile or something like that is always the stereotype.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that we're all Americans are rich. I don't think that counts. But
Again, yeah, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
It just depends on what you want out of the relationship with that individual and that person. And it can change because, after I, deferred to Tawana, I said, well, maybe I've been fetishized a few times as well. And frankly, I didn't care.
I'm sure you have.
care.
You have.
It's
Bring
time
it
for
on,
wine.
baby.
Yeah. Come on, Poppy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So F Doctor asks, has your dating impacted your children? What safeguards do you put in place to protect them emotionally and or physically? Well, first of all, are your kids grown?
Yeah, all my kids are grown, 38, 37, 32, and 30.
Okay.
And yeah, from day one, I'm sure, I made mistakes when my wife, passed, but I told them, at a very young age, I will probably have relationships, but you will not know about them. You won't be exposed. That's just how I chose to handle that. Frankly, it's a better question for them. I think depending on which child you ask, they would say that they have been impacted. I would speculate that they probably don't like my loose behavior, if you will, quote unquote. And I know, one of my children really takes offense when I talk about women or those experiences. She doesn't want to hear it at all. Doesn't want to think about me in that context. So I try to keep it separate, but at the same time, they know that I'm active out there and doing heaven knows what, so I don't
Or
know.
hell knows what.
Right, exactly.
So
And,
have they come across your profile on Bumble?
No, thank God. I have come across a couple of their friends in Houston. Yeah, but obviously I just swipe left. I move on as quickly as possible from that.
Oh,
So
so
I
swipe left is no, swipe right is
no.
yes.
Yes, that's correct.
That's how unsophisticated I am. I don't
So
know.
let me share some dating apps in case anyone is on here.
I know you
go ahead.
didn't really say that, but I got to ask the question.
Please.
So do the dating apps, like, I mean, I've never used them. So do that. What was I going to call it? I was going to call it something. To get the get right to it apps, let's cut to
that.
Yeah, that's
cut
for
to the
Tindr.
face
That's
apps.
Tindr.
Okay. Do they really work? I mean, do they really? Really
Yeah,
work.
I've had experiences, yeah, where it works. Not that often. I'm mostly on Bumble and on Hinge, but yes, it's happened a few times where you hit it off right then and there. You meet
So those are
somewhere.
just hookup. We're gonna hook up and then maybe we'll see each other again, maybe we won't. But this is where we go.
Um, yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty much it.
Okay.
And
So
that has not happened abroad, mind you, but it's
Oh,
happened in the
interesting.
States. Yeah,
Okay.
for me.
Okay. Okay, Twana, you're gonna educate
yes.
us.
I want to tell, because just in case there are people out there who are like you were saying, like Rick and Lacey, y'all are partnered, and you're saying, "Oh, okay, we haven't been dating forever." Like there might be people that are watching that are like same age as all of us, like because we're all
New
generally
single.
the same, but single, and being like, "Well, what are these apps?" But I haven't had to deal with these. I don't know how to do it. So just to kind of run through what some of these are. So what are commonly called hookup apps are one where you're not expected to really have a profile of that much. You just kind of say where you live, some few pictures of yourself or whatever, and then and what you're looking for, and then you swipe left. No, I don't want this person, or swipe right. And when you swipe right and they swipe right on you, it's called a match. And then these can look at anything like, "Hey, I live at so and so. Are you around? Or where are you? Or what's going on?" You could literally just like hook up. Traditionally, these apps have been Grinder for the LGBT community, mostly men, like for gay men, Grinder. And then Tender was the one that was Tindr, was the one for straight folks and gay folks, who was more open than traditionally just gay men, which Grinder was. So that's what it started as. But right now, all of the apps are hookup apps or relationship apps. I have multiple friends who've married people they met on Tinder, and it wasn't
Oh,
Okay.
just a quick hookup thing. Yeah,
Okay.
including an American friend here, actually, who met a guy. She's American, living here in Portugal. She met a guy from another European country who was in town for whatever he was in town for. They ended up matching up or whatever, had a good time, and he went back to his country. She went to visit, and they did that for a while and started catching feelings with each other. And he moved here. They got a place. He proposed last January. She's
wow.
getting ready to move to that country now to go with him. So they're
Nice.
all hookup apps. They're all dating apps. And so going through
Interesting.
the list though, so Tinder, that was more of its founding is like a hookup app. But now people actually have profiles, what they like, stuff like that there. Grinders for
Okay.
LGBTQ,
Right.
predominantly gay men on Grinder.
Okay.
Then of the ones that are just more, everybody's kind of on them. You've got uh, Hinge, which tends Hinge, which tends to skew a little bit younger, but it's also like open for everybody and things like that. And you can like someone, they can like you. You can comment to them, you can message them, they can message you. That's called Hinge. There's another one that's called Happn, Happn, and that is they see where you're going and where that other people are going, and they show you profiles of people that you've passed them at some point and may have noticed them or may not have, but you've happened upon them at some point. And so it's much more in this like maybe you all go hiking to get like you're doing similar things, you're in similar spaces, live in the same neighborhood or something. So that's called Happn. There's one called Bumble, like Bumblebee, and it's yellow and black, like Bumble. And that one was, oh, so the founder said a lot of these women that are in the dating apps, there are more men traditionally than women on them. So women are getting inundated with requests. They were like, ooh, let's do a dating app where men can't write to women. Once you match, the woman has to be the one to reach out to you. And if she does, then you can actually make a match. And that one's called Bumble.
Oh,
And that key
interesting.
feature is that the woman has to respond first, has to
Okay.
reach out
Yeah.
first. Otherwise, you can't.
I was
So
going
then
to say that one
those
was
are,
created by a woman because I remember
Right.
when it went public.
yep,
That's
exactly.
right.
Yep,
Yeah.
Bumble, exactly.
Yeah.
That one, it's newer than some of the other ones that I mentioned. So Bumble is another one. Who's it? Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, Happen, OkCupid, the OGs. So if you are looking for an older person and you're like, you know what, I'm older, I want to date someone that's a little bit older, then the apps that have been around a little bit longer are going to be ones that people use. Much like people who use Facebook tend to be older than the people who use TikTok because Facebook was around longer. And so the people who are using things like OkCupid and Match tend to be older because these sites predate the Tindrs, the Bumbles, the Happns, and all of that. So if you're looking for an older person and you're looking for someone who might be looking for a more traditional, conventional relationship, OkCupid and Match might be the profiles for you. If you are not looking for a traditional one and you would prefer to match with someone who's into polyamory, open relationships, or anything like that, then one of the ones that might be good for you is called Feeld. FEELD. It is the non-monogamy dating app. And so couples will put, and they'll say, hey, we're a couple, we're into ethical non-monogamy, which is a great book. It's called The Ethical Slut, and it's about ethical non-monogamy. How can you be pleasurable and all of these things? Highly recommend that book. So ethical non-monogamy is cheating. What the heck are you talking about? We're not cheating. We're both enjoying pleasure, and we're a couple. Here's our profile together, and we're looking to bring in a third. If you're interested in joining us, hey, here's what she likes, here's what I like, here we go, or whatever. So Feeld is much more for non-monogamous, non-conventional, like just kind of throwing all that stuff aside and looking for those. So those are a few apps to kind of get you started. And then OurTime is I don't even know if they have an app. I know it's a website. You have to be over, you don't have to, but their whole target is it's our time. We're over 50. So they're explicitly going for the over 50 crowd. So if you're like, I'm over 50, I want to date someone who's over 50. I don't want to download all these apps and get involved with all of that stuff. OurTime is a site that might be good for you.
Oh. Wow.
Well,
but that's at least a few samples.
I've written these down. I didn't write these down because I'm going to use them, folks. Don't get it twisted.
I wouldn't judge if you were. I'd just say have that conversation with Rick first.
No, that just sounds like work, and I'm trying to do as little as possible. So no, but I am going to try and get the links to all of these to put them in the description below, or at least list them in the description below. After this, so if you're watching from the future, it's probably going to be there. Hi, let us know that you're in the chat. Yeah, we've got 189 people watching right now. So hit that like button if you're finding this information interesting. Keith, is the expectation when you're dating or in a relationship that your partner be monogamous, although you're polyamorous, or are you okay if your partner is also poly?
I'm okay if they're also poly. And I'm still not sure I'm polyamorous, but yes. Okay.
Basically, he's just not into committing to
A relationship.
A long-term relationship with the expectation of marriage and that whole thing.
That's right.
He's just having fun, chilling,
But no expectation on the partner either. It goes both ways.
So no hypocrisy.
Well, as far as I say, you have to ask my partners if there's any hypocrisy there.
So Carrie Lee, okay, I got your question in Isan 1 when I was in. Oh, and I know someone said that they were coming to Portugal in July. Yay! We won't be here though. We will be in the United States. Me in the United States. I'm gonna miss Twana's summer birthday, but I will be back for Alex and Jerry's birthday. So we will be back. Thank God. When I was in Portugal, only younger men hit on me. If I move there, is this what I will have to adjust to, or do older men flirt and date older women? I am 62 years old. Well, here's the great thing. Okay, so Isan 1 bit. Now we know that you're a woman. I swear, in my opinion, I am invisible in the United States. I'm invisible. I'm 58 years old. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm invisible. According to Rick, I'm not invisible here. I don't notice. But according to him, I'm not invisible. He sometimes walks behind me because I walk fast, and he tells me that people will be checking me out. I don't know.
I've told you that, and Deb told you that.
Yeah,
I told her that too.
Yeah. Tawana's told
I've noticed people checking you. I think it could be. Plus, I think other cultures, older women are seen as sexy. France, in particular, is known for it. Their current president is dating his teacher, is married to his teacher, Macron. She's significantly older than him. She taught him. I think she was his theater teacher when they were in school. And so French men think older women are someone who knows who they are sexually, who's confident, and not asking me, am I pretty? all the kind of stuff that we did maybe when we were much younger, but who is secure in themselves, makes their own money, is like they find that incredibly sexy. And so
Yeah.
an older woman is seen as a very sexy, to be desired thing. And when you think of like French actresses, and some of them tend to be older, right? Like there's not this thing that, you pass your
Right.
last effable day is the
Right.
joke. That you pass
Right.
your last effable day at a certain date in the United
40s or
States, that
whatever.
doesn't hold up in a lot of
Around the
other
world.
countries.
So I think that's a good thing.
Agreed.
Isan one. I'm wondering if there may be less divorce here in Portugal. This is a Catholic country. Divorce is still legal, right? It's not about that. Um, Abortion is still legal here. It's not about that. But money comes into play sometimes when it comes to divorce as well. It's easier with two incomes. So I'm wondering if there are just more single younger men. And maybe that's why if you're going to do the Move to Portugal Summit, I've got at least one born and raised Portuguese person so far committed to doing some of the soft side for the virtual summit, talking about their culture, how you make Portuguese friends, dating in Portugal, and all of this stuff, dating Portuguese people, and all of those kinds of things. So we've got one person so far who is committed, and we're trying to find some more. So, Rui, if you're watching, not about dating, just about meeting Portuguese people and becoming part of the community.
My daughter is here with us. My daughter.
Rick is jealous because I can talk to cats.
No, not because they don't understand.
I can talk to
He
cats. And he's
understands
jealous.
her.
Is it true that people in Europe, I know this is broad, but cheat more openly? This may have been answered. No one's.
What makes you think they're cheating?
Yeah, I haven't been in a cheating relationship that I'm aware of, at least. I don't know. I can't answer that.
So
My
all the
impression
people
is that's my perception, but I have
Okay.
nothing to base it on.
There's another good book that I'll recommend. I love reading, and so I'm a nerd. If you haven't figured that out yet, I'm a nerd, and so I love things like scientific research and books and all this crazy stuff. So if you're interested in this idea of who cheats more, how do they cheat, and all of these, there's a woman named Pamela Druckerman that she's an American living in France, married to a British guy, and she has a book that was called Lust, not Lost, but Lust in translation. And so the premise of the book is not who cheats more or anything like that. It's that of all of the cultures where cheating does happen, they have different scripts by which is expected, how it's expected to play out. So as one example, and in the US, the script is very much so, I would argue it's actually gendered. Whereas if you are a woman and a man has cheated on you and you're straight, you're a woman, a man's cheated on you, the script has to look something like this. One, he has to tell you because he's a piece of dirt if he doesn't, because the only thing worse, according to America, the only thing worse than a cheater is a liar. So they have to say that they did it. So they have to confess their sin and say that they did this awful thing. And then they have to tell you why they did it and who they did it with. It's not enough to just say like, oh, I did it. It's like, with who? Like, what happened? Like, who? They have to say who in particular it was. And then once you've confessed your sin and said who it was, you have to explain why them. Like, why was she younger? Was she older? Was she prettier? Like, why that person? Like, why did you do this awful, horrible thing that happens in nature every day? Why did you do this thing? And you have to, do it that way. That's not universal. That's an American script. And so what she said is when she went to France and kind of explained that's how it works here, they were surprised. They didn't believe her. They were like, why would you tell? Like, obviously that's going to hurt them.
Right.
Obviously.
Right.
Like,
it's a selfish thing.
Yeah, like that's going to hurt them. Obviously. Why would you tell them that? And they didn't believe her, she says, when she was explaining, no, this is how it works. And so in other cultures, it may be like expected. the joke in the 90s, I was living in England in the 90s, and people in Europe were telling me the joke was, so President Clinton
Clinton.
cheated, and people were like, oh my God, it's just awful. And then so he got impeached for it. And they were like, in a lot of European countries, the scandal is people are wondering if the president is gay because he hasn't had an affair. And so this idea that it's like normal, the way we think of cheating or talk about cheating, it's as cultured as dating itself is, as marriage itself is,
Interesting.
how those things work. So that's a good book. It's called Lust in Translation, Infidelity from Tokyo to Tennessee. And she talks about different cultures of cheating. So I don't know that Europeans cheat more or less, because that goes back to what we talked about in the top of the hour of last hour, what people actually tell you they do, what they say they do, and what they believe they do. Maybe they're more honest. If you ask them in a social science research, have you cheated on your partner? Maybe they're more likely to be honest about it and say, yes. Obviously, I didn't tell them, that would be hurtful. Whereas Americans would be like, no, me cheat? What? Who do you think I am? I'm not an awful person.
I think Americans have, I will put a link to this book. I'll find it after and put a link to the book in the description below. But I think Americans have fake morality. You know, they pretend.
Say it louder.
Like
say it again. Say it louder.
We pretend like we're so moral and this and that and the other, and you know, and it's baloney. It's baloney.
Agreed.
I think they're the freaking
It's fake and convenient morality.
It's definitely
Right.
convenient.
So it's only convenient. You know, you're only moral when it's convenient for you to be moral.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I really emphasize keeping your own counsel in isolation, in a vacuum.
Yep.
Because this stuff it's toxic to me, and it's destructive, and it encourages you to lie to yourself.
Come on. Exactly.
Which is the worst thing that you can do. I always say, don't carry this with me, but I always say it's fine to lie, just don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
First and foremost, do not lie to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't get away with it.
Well, you can get away with it. And
yeah, you can.
Like Gloria Benson in Full Flight from Reality.
Yeah.
But there's not alignment, self-realization, self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I say leave the least secretive life as possible. So like and I said zero filter with me. What I say, like everything I've told you is true. And most people say it's like a straight shooter. What you see is what you get, kind of thing. And I'm the same way in relationships. I've literally asked people, like when we talked about men that I've been dating, I tell them about Pamela's book and I say, how do you prefer in relationships? Like what? And I ask this question. What do you think we should do when we're attracted to other people? How do you think that should play out for us? And have that be a conversation. Like literally have that be a conversation, because we are going to be attracted to other people. We are, period, full stop. So sometimes it's good to have that conversation. How do you think we should handle it when we are attracted to other people? What would make you feel most validated? What would make you feel safest? And so you might find things like your partner would say, to your shock and surprise and awe, might say, yes, I'm so glad you brought this up. Obviously, we're going to be attracted to other people. I already am attracted to someone else, but I didn't know if you would be comfortable with us even talking about this. That might turn into you doubling down on your relationship and you being much more honest about how you actually feel about each other. That might pull you closer. It might lead into you all having a conversation about opening up your relationship between you all. Leave your business out of everybody else's mouths and thoughts or whatever, but you all might decide between the 2 or 3 or whatever more if you have like, okay, let's talk about what this could look like. Or you might say, hey, why don't we actually research and look at what non-monogamy means, what polyamory means, and see if that's something that looks like our relationship. Or it could lead to you having that conversation and the person says, oh, I'm so glad you asked. None of my other partners asked me, and I've never been in a relationship where I haven't cheated on someone. You can say, you know what, that doesn't work for me. Like, I'm fine with us having a conversation and you being honest and us talking about what we want, but cheating is not my thing. That's not non-monogamy. That's just cheating is cheating. That's different. And so I'm not interested.
Expectation is monogamy. If that's the agreement that y'all made, if it's not, then it's not. Before we get to Henry's question, I have to ask this because I remember before the pandemic, a bunch of us went out to brunch, and it was everything from like 20-year-olds to 80-year-olds and everything in between. So I'm looking at Greta's comment, and she says, "Wow, so much has changed," and that's what reminded me. And so a friend of mine who at the time was like 64, newly single, like I can't remember if it was divorced or widowed. And she's like, "So what is the thing with the dick pics?" She said, "I go on a date, whether it is through an app or a dating site or meeting somebody through a friend. And like right after the date, they're sending me pictures of their hot dogs." Now, I'm a 65-year-old hot dogs. I don't know, but
just age
like,
I think,
age
yeah, I
why
have an
is
opinion.
that a thing? Yes,
I
give
have
me
an
your
opinion. They just are not very sophisticated in, advancing the relationship. It sounds like they're attracted to whoever they're going out with, and they want to have a sexual relationship with them, and this is the
And this is
crude
how they
way that they
communicate.
do it. Yeah, it's
my
crazy.
gosh.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now that said, I've had a couple of women ask me for a picture. So, it is, whatever you're comfortable with. And I don't mind. I don't take offense at that. But yeah, I think it's inappropriate and out of line.
Unsolicited.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
unsolicited
that's the
and it's
thing.
offensive. Yeah.
Etiquette says you don't hand someone your business card until they ask for it.
I guess.
I love your
Yeah.
bougie ass attitude. The way you even said it, she said, "You don't hand someone your business card until they ask for it." She said, "They ask
Not
for it.
ask for
Ask
it.
for it." I didn't say ask. Look, I'm
No,
bougie
you
too.
didn't. No, you didn't.
I wouldn't say ask. Who do you think I am,
Like,
Elise?
like,
Unless they ask
what,
for it. Yeah.
what did I say or do to make you think I want a picture of your hot dog?
I've
But
asked for
it
hot
may
dog
work.
pictures.
It could
If you
work.
ask for it, then that's fine. But if
It
I
may
don't
work for
ask
them.
for it,
Who knows? Yeah, I have no idea.
it
These
obviously works for them because otherwise they wouldn't be sending it out.
these public figures that do it, that's the craziest thing to me.
Especially in America. Now, it might work
Yeah.
in France, as Tawana says, but in America, with our fake religiosity and our fake morals and all that other fake stuff, is like, no, you can't get away with that. Okay. Sorry, Henry, to be talking about dingling pictures with your name up. But I said it. Do you find it more difficult to learn language after the age of 50? How challenging is it to delve into different cultures effectively? So first thing that I'm going to say before I let our guest speak is that we did do a video about 4 weeks ago talking about learning a language as an adult.
Nice.
So that you don't stay stuck in the United States. So you should check that out. And then what do you all think?
Yes, I find it very difficult, particularly for the Portuguese language. I don't pick up the tongue very easily, and it's hard for me to comprehend English speakers a lot of times, depending on how fast they speak and whatnot. But if it's another language, it's very challenging. And I marvel, at my kids and at my grandson, how they pick up languages so easily. So I do think there's something there that, blocks or precludes me from picking it up easily. And then on the culture question, I think it is difficult to really penetrate the culture. The place where I live the building is all expats, even though the block, Tawana, the block,
Yep.
is a lot of local people. But again, because of the language barrier and the people just don't gravitate or speak to me. I've met a couple of people in this small kitchen that's family owned. Again, Tawana, you would be familiar with
Yep.
it. And that was cool. I think I only engaged with them though is because one of the sons or stepson was from Brazil, and he connected to me because I was Black. So I don't know that I have any real authentic engagement in the culture. I'm trying to do that. I do go to the suburbs, Kasem. I want to say, what is it? It starts with an A. I'm blanking on the name, but I
Maduro.
go out there and integrate and engage with the African community. The folks that have been colonized from Mozambique and Angola and whatnot, and that's easier to do. Typically, they speak English as well, but with the traditional Portuguese people, it's really kind of hard.
Especially Lisboans. They speak
Yeah.
fast. So they speak, just like in America, there's different accents everywhere. Twana is good at learning languages, so I'm just going to put that out there. I don't know if I'm good at learning languages, but I do know that if you are committed, like this can't be something that you just do by, Duolingo, especially
Casually. Yeah.
as casually. Like you have to be committed to learning. And so every time I'm out, I don't care if they speak English to me unless it's like business related, like banking or something like that. But if it's just transactional, ordering food, being in the grocery store, asking someone to pay, I'm going to speak Portuguese. They'll speak English to me and I'm going to speak my little messed up Portuguese is what I'm going
I'm
to do.
sure they appreciate it too.
And then I asked them if I say it correctly, if they speak English. When we were out in Cascais the other day, she looked Cabo Verde, but I don't know, maybe Brazilian, and she didn't speak any English, and she didn't really understand my Portuguese. But her Portuguese comrade or associate did. She did understand it. So there's some tips in that video. But the thing and there's also a link down below to get 70% off of your first lesson through Preply platform. So I've been taking Spanish, one-on-one Spanish personal lessons for 3 years and a bit, and then Portuguese lessons for about 5 to 6 months at this point. And Spanish has definitely helped. It has definitely helped. I can carry on a basic conversation in Portuguese at this point. My accent probably sucks because the pronunciation is the hard thing with Portuguese. But I think it just takes commitment and practice. And so we have private lessons through Zoom, in our pajamas if we want, do your homework. And then, there's other things like there's Language Reactor that is a plugin for Chrome, and it works with YouTube. It works with Netflix. It has a lot of different languages, including European Portuguese, if that's your thing, Spanish, German, et cetera, et cetera. And it will put the translation in subtitles down below the movie, the YouTube video or whatever, and it will pause and you can hover your mouse over it and it will tell you what that word means. So you can get used to hearing it. The third thing that I will say is whatever you're interested in, very simple short videos, watch those. So you can start picking up and hearing those words and knowing what they mean, like how to fry an egg. If you're interested in cooking, like they make leek soup here in Portugal, how to make leek soup. If I were in Mexico, how to make pozole or something like that. And you start picking up those words, hearing the accent, so you recognize the verb, et cetera, et cetera. I think it is the best thing to stave off senility. Learn a language.
Yes.
Learn a language.
Right. Duly noted.
We're going to keep speaking Portuguese. I love it.
So someone asked if you were a sex educator. Yeah, when you watch from the top, you will see that she will say, yes.
I am. Yes.
Twana, can you share the name of your Black veterinarian?
I love Patrick Barnes. Dr. Patrick Barnes in Washington, D.C. He's at what was it called? I think it's called the Silver Spring Animal Hospital, but they moved from Silver Spring over to the next neighborhood over. Where the hell was that? I can't remember. But the DMV. If you're in Washington, D.C., Dr.
Wow.
Patrick Barnes is amazing. He is the sweetest, kindest, gentlest human being. Adored him so much. The woman who I think started or at least Catsby, my baby girl is 9. And so I'd been going there since I've had her. And so there was an Indian American woman who was there too. I don't know if she's still there, but I saw less and less of her and more Patrick. So I don't know if she's not there as much, but I know he's there more often. He's got like a farm in his house. I forget how many pets he's got, but he loves animals, which I was just so grateful for. One of my nephews is a environmental lawyer, just finished grad school and finished law school and is now practicing in a law thing in a place. Details not relevant. But one of the things I really adored about Patrick when I first started taking my cat there is how much he loved animals. It reminded me of my nephew, and my nephew is a baby. Ever since he was young, he loved the environment, he loved animals and things like that. And that same genuine passion and joy for living things, I saw that in Dr. Barnes when I went there. And when I would go for my appointments, he remembered more about Catsby between appointment A and appointment B than my initial. I got a better doctor, but when I moved to DC, I was like, he's remembered more about my cat than my doctor remembers about my body. And so he's like, oh, is this still happening? Last time Catsby was here was that. He was really, really sweet. I can't recommend him enough. I recommended all my friends in DC take their pets to Dr. Barnes. Dr. Patrick Barnes at Silver Spring Animal Hospital.
There you go. So Stylish Techie says, oh my God, I haven't seen Twana in years. She inspired me to move to Europe in 2009. What a pleasure.
Yes.
I don't know who Stylish Techie is, but I understand anonymity.
Wonderful.
So Nana is asking, can Halisi speak on that as well? As a woman dating after having children already, you have to watch out for creeps. How did you know Rick was solid?
Ooh. But do we know Rick is solid? Do we know that though? Joking, obviously. We love Rick.
So, that's a great question. That is a great question. And I think, it's several things. I looked at who his friends are and how are they. I look at those relationships and how are they. How does he speak about his mom? I don't trust men who don't like their mom.
Yep.
You got women issues and I don't want to deal with it. I ain't fixing you. Rick adored his mom. And one of his good friends had his daughters around him.
Mm.
So, I think you can judge people by the company that they keep. Truly. And, we know, if we think back at the effed up people that we were involved with, we knew they were effed up. We knew, those doubts that came in and you just didn't listen to yourself. Right.
You
thought you could fix them. Right. So listen to your gut, because Holy Spirit, whatever you want to say, your gut is telling you when somebody has the creep factor. And I'm just going to give him some props and say, after my biological son came back from the sperm donor and his wife, staying with them for a couple of weeks, he said, thank you, Mom. You and Rick have shown me what a marriage is supposed to look like.
That's great.
That was at 12 years old.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Right? And so, I was very kind of particular because I did have a bad situation and had to get a restraining order. So that's why he's not my first husband, because I made those mistakes and I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew, and I rationalized it away. I wonder if those Portuguese men love bootylicious women there.
I think so. I
Is
don't know, but I
is
would think
that
so.
the thing?
Who
Is that
doesn't?
the thing? Okay, so if those are the kind of questions and comments we're getting now, maybe we have done the thing.
Auntie Trey. Oh my goodness.
Right? Do people in Portugal still believe in friendships? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Portuguese people, okay, I haven't been here long enough to make generalizations, but this generalization I can stand behind. I found an honest, genuine compassion and kindness in general
Yes.
with Portuguese
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I was on the beach with a friend over the weekend, and she was flying in. A friend of ours, we had never met, mutual friend was like, "Hey, Tawana's living in Portugal. You're going to Portugal. You should meet up." I was like, "Sure." I was planning on going to the beach. This was yesterday. It's hot as hell here. And so I was like, I'm going to the beach. I was going to go alone and just kind of journal or whatever. If you want to go, we can play in the water and kind of come to the beach, but it's low key. She's like, sure. So we were at the beach. We had a great time, got in the water, and I was like, let's go get some food. So we left all of our stuff there because you can here in the US. I wouldn't leave my cat without having everything. Like, you don't leave anything without like making sure your stuff's okay. But I left my speaker, my little speaker, my stuff, like everything. Took my keys, my phone with me, but I left everything else there on the beach or whatever. So we were gone. We had caipirinhas, we had food, like not far, but like away from the water and at one of the shops. So then we walked back down, and I noticed that like the tide had come up because it'd been hours, like it was getting closer to sunset. And so the water was further in. I was like, oh shit, like we were
My,
pretty
my
close to the water.
Bluetooth.
Yeah, I was like, we were pretty close to the water before. And so I was like worried. And so I was like walking, and I didn't see my towel where it was. It was like one of those big beach blanket kind of things in the bag. And so I was looking, and so this woman came up to me, and so she's speaking Portuguese, and I understand a little, but not like I don't know the word for moved. I could say I would
Oh my
like to order
gosh.
this. Can you turn left? But I didn't know how to say move. But she basically, between hand movements and everything, she saw that the water was starting to come up, and she noticed that I had like electronics and other stuff in it. So she picked it up and she moved it further back from it. So she was pointing, your stuff is there so that it wouldn't get wet. And so she had literally physically moved my things so it wouldn't get washed away in the water or get wet. And I just feel like Khaleesi said, I've found just a generosity and kindness and just calm, safe, good, genuine, warm vibe among people here that I've had to check myself, where I assumed negative intent or assumed like
Right,
just
right.
like I had an Uber driver. She was like, not Uber, it was taxi. I didn't know better. I just got here, took a taxi, and so she was like, "Well, you have to pay cash. We don't take cards." And so she stopped and she's like, "Here's an ATM. Why don't we use that ATM?" So I got out and I took a picture of her license plate, and then I got my money. I got back in, and she's like, "Why'd you take a picture of my license plate?" I'm like, "Because if you drove off, I'd have some idea of who." She was so offended. She was so incredibly offended. She was like, why would you? And I was trying to explain
That's a thing in the States. They
this
would
is
do that.
exactly. Not only that, she would have taken me to an ATM where her buddy would have been like taking them like that. I'm born in Chicago, spent most of my adult life living in DC and New York, living in cities. And so I'm much more on the like on guard. And so I've had to check myself, and a lot of the survival techniques we have in the
Right.
US, I don't need to do that here. And so learning to trust myself to know when it's okay to let that down a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very pleasant. It's just a pleasant demeanor just
Mhm.
about with everybody that you
Yeah.
encounter.
Yep. Newly divorced and never been on an app. Hey, glass half full. True question. Does hookup mean you're getting it that night, or do you say dinner only? Don't even think about it. Or what? What do you
You
say?
whatever you're comfortable with, you decide.
Yes, and
You're
hookup does mean yes. Just
right.
that's what.
Hookup typically means you're having sex. Um, that's what I've learned at least. But if you don't want to do that, you're not comfortable with that, say that and be clear and candid about it. And I like to believe most people will honor that. Who knows?
Don't go alone anywhere with anybody. Safety
Yeah.
stuff too. It's just that I would never, ever, ever give someone my address from an online dating thing and say, let's meet here for dinner. I wouldn't go to their home. I wouldn't meet them in a place of their choosing in a neighborhood that I didn't know. Just some real basic kind of safety things because it's still a stranger. You still don't
Right.
know who this person is. And
You
so
have to use
definitely
common sense.
kind of check feelings and vibes of if you are in an online dating app and you've never been on one and you're trying it out, like just basic public places, daytime or light hours, generally speaking. Um, Make sure that if you're driving, that you don't get in the car with them and they have your license plates number. You can get other information from someone if you have their license plate. So just basic safety stuff. If you're doing in the U.S. here, I don't think you have to worry as much. We're not as violent as the U.S. But generally speaking, if you've never been on a dating app, those are the kinds of things you want to think about. If you have a unique identifier name, so that like Twana Angela Hines, there's no other person on the planet with those three. I probably wouldn't put Twana Angela Hines as my username. And so like these kinds of things, you can put anything, like kitty lover, which might be tied to porn, but something that like you can put a different thing. You don't even have to put your name, but you can just kind of like err on the side of safety. And if you're looking for another good book recommendation, what's that guy's name?
That's 3 books,
To
Felicia.
Gavin.
I hope you got 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gavin DeBecker. Gavin DeBecker wrote a classic. It's probably 40 years old at this point. He's probably written other things, but he's a renowned security expert. And his book is called The Gift of Fear. And his whole premise is, and especially in the US, that we're taught no fear, about this culture, don't be afraid. It's like we're animals. Fear is your hardwired instinct. And so he talks and he shares all these stories where people didn't listen to their fear, they didn't whatever, and it didn't work out well for them. But it's really about listening to that when you get the ick or when you get that like
Yeah.
you don't quite know. It's really a book about, and his writing really goes into how do you actually lean into and trust fear.
Right.
Fear tells you, going too fast or not comfortable with this or something in me wants to pump the brakes and I'm not sure why, but believe that, listen to that.
Yeah, I would say just be upfront and clear, glass half full. Don't beat around the bush. And if it's dinner only and don't even think about it, just say, these are my boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
These are my boundaries. Do you have a vet here, Twana, in Portugal yet?
I don't. I'm an awful kitty mommy. I just go to my local place. I don't have like Dr. Barnes. Like I knew like their
Right.
place, and he knew Catsby's name. Like I've taken Catsby to like the local veterinarian, but like I spoke to them, but I don't have like this is my vet here. I haven't
Right.
found a good one yet. Wonderful people that I went to, but I'm just saying that's like I just needed something, so I went to that one. It wasn't like I found a great vet. I just
And
went
there's
to the local
tons
one.
of vets
Yeah,
here
they
too.
got 'em.
Yeah.
They're
They
everywhere.
got two or three in every neighborhood.
Yeah, she's gone to
Really-
2 different ones already, and she's been treated wonderfully. So yeah.
That's great. So do people hang out and meet at jazz clubs? And well, Hernani's is kind of a jazz club, isn't it?
Yeah, they got some new jazz clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
and
just heard about
Nisa's.
one. I
Nisa's,
forgot where though.
Nisa's
Today,
Lounge in El
Yeah.
Jez.
Yeah, Nisa's.
Nisa's
NISA,
Lounge
right?
in El Jez,
Right.
like right next
That
to
was the
Lisbon.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one I heard about.
There are new businesses coming up, jazz clubs and stuff like that. So
Yeah. The old fashioned way of going to the club, not swipe.
Oh, the club.
You can still swipe at the clubs.
Yes.
meet me at the club.
What's yours saying? From a perspective of a Portuguese, you are a little creepy in the way that you look at others. Yeah, the truth are more simple if you like the other person.
You saying Americans are creepy?
We probably are. Personality and have a sexual attraction, don't care who you are. Okay, great. Or your color or your religion or anything else. I do see a lot more interracial dating here in Portugal. I mean, it doesn't stick out here. It doesn't look so intentional here. It just is. That's just my perspective. I don't know.
I have a similar.
You think so? Yeah. And from an
Yeah.
American with all of our garbage that we have to detox from.
Right.
All right. I think we've done it. I think we've done it. So what would you like people to leave with when it comes to dating abroad? I've noticed, and you guys have probably noticed this too, women more than men. I would say a good portion of the people that we know who have moved here to Portugal are single.
Hmm.
More
Women, single
singles,
women.
yes, more singles than married folks. And I'm thinking about Mexico. Maybe that's half and half for the people that we know. But yeah, there's tons of single people. So a single person who is planning to move here, a male actually, asked us to do this show.
Oh,
And it's been a
Interesting.
minute. Yeah, it's been a minute. I asking people because I've asked people and they're like, I don't feel comfortable coming on there talking about my dating life. So thank you, Keith.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Tawana,
much.
for
you're
being
Yes,
so
being
welcome.
open and
transparent.
It
honest.
helps
Of
to not
course.
have much of a dating life. Then you're more comfortable.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I suppose if you are in a relationship that's supposed to be committed
Right.
and is supposed
Good
to be
point.
like going, maybe that that other
Yeah.
person may not be comfortable with you talking about your relationship. But
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
dating in general, unless you don't want them to know some stuff,
Nothing to
I don't
hide
know.
here.
I don't know. But is there anything that you want to leave people with, especially at North Americans coming to another country, another culture, things that they should think about, things that they should consider, etc.? Let's start with you, Keith.
I would say be open and employ discretion, both personally, again with your own counsel, and discretion with your partner in terms of what your expectations are, what you want out of a relationship, and how you can work with that partner to achieve that. So pretty simple.
Yeah, yeah. Twana?
Yeah, I agree with everything Keith just said. And I would add also, don't settle. Like, know your worth, know what you want, know it's possible, believe that to get it, and don't settle for something that's less than what you want and what you deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially y'all, you don't have to settle for struggle love. Like we struggled
Exactly.
in the
Yeah.
United States. We didn't necessarily struggle financially, but we struggled just to get respect for being a human being.
Yeah.
So don't come someplace else and repeat and get into struggle
Same
love,
mistake. Yeah,
right?
same
Like
trap.
you're gonna help this person. No, you have value, know your value. One of the things that I used to tell my kids, not my biological kids, but all my adopted kids, is that write out your values, write out your expectations from the other person and the value system that you want them to have as well. Have it in writing before you even meet somebody. And that way you don't get into, ooh, but he cute, he fine though, ain't he? Get over it. He fine, she fine, they fine, and all of that. And look back at that list, just like we tell you when you're country shopping, look back at that list, especially if you're going for monogamy, to make sure that you are not just getting caught up in attraction and that this is something that can last. If it's just about dating, having fun, having someone to go to concerts with, maybe a little hookup here and there, that's a different story. That's a different story, but don't settle. Don't settle. All right, my loves. I'm
Yay.
sure that you have more questions after this. You can call Twana. Don't call us. Usually we
Follow us
say,
online. We're online.
usually I say you can book a one-on-one call, but not about dating. You can book a one-on-one call about moving abroad, about how to get your money straight, about all of that stuff. That information is below. If it's dating, you need to follow the funky brown chick.
Yes. Love it. Love it. I'll
we've
set you straight. Yes.
we've been out of the scene too long. Too long. We're swiping. I don't know. I thought that was something you did with a bidet or something. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
All right, y'all. We love
I
you.
love
We
this.
will see you next Sunday. We will be in the States next Sunday. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about if we have any reverse culture shock. I don't know if that will be the subject matter, but we might talk about it a little bit. So we love you, Keith and Twana. We love
Thank
you,
you
our
so
Black
much.
Utopia
All right, thank you.
family. We love you.
All
We
right,
love you.
take
See you
care.
later.
Good
Bye,
luck.
everyone.
Be careful out there.
Yes. Have fun.
Right?